It started with the knock. Not the kind you hear in movies. This one was flat, hard, final. My eyes snapped open before the last thud hit the door. 4:57. The kitchen clock glowed through the crack under my bedroom door, mocking me with its precision. I sat up, heart beating slow but heavy, like it already knew what was coming. When I opened the door, my father was standing there, dressed, awake, waiting. Behind him, my mother hovered near the hallway mirror, arms crossed, her eyes fixed anywhere but on me. "You need to leave, Shiloh. Now," she said. I blinked. My voice didn't come right away, like it got stuck somewhere between confusion and instinct. "Why? What's going on?" She didn't answer. Neither did he. Just looked at me, like I was someone who'd overstayed their welcome, like a stranger. Then I saw it. The suitcase, parked neatly by the front door. Zipped, packed, my name tag on it. This wasn't a fight. It wasn't even a decision. It was done. I reached for my jacket, fumbling. I remember my hand shaking, trying to fit into the sleeve like it wasn't mine. When I turned back toward her, my mother added, "It's better this way. You'll thank us later." That was it. No hugs, no raised voices. Just quiet rejection in a house where my voice never mattered anyway. As I stepped outside, snow was still falling, soft and soundless. The porch light flickered above me. I turned back for a second and noticed the wall above the stairs. The family photo was gone. My spot in the frame? Erased. A hollow laugh bubbled in my throat, but it died quickly. Instead, I listened to the car in the driveway start, heard a voice, maybe my sister's, laughing inside. My phone buzzed. A single message. "Don't make this harder." It hit different. Like betrayal should scream, but this one whispered. Erasing someone politely, that's a special kind of cruelty. I walked down the driveway, boots sinking into the snow. The street was empty, quiet. I had no idea where I was going. The only thing I carried besides my bag was an old tablecloth from Grandma Alden. She embroidered my name into it when I was 12. I don't think they even noticed I took it. Breath clouded in the air. I whispered, "Keep walking, Shiloh. Don't stop." My bank balance, $38.42. That was all they left me with. No car, no warning, no plan. A pickup drove past. The window rolled down. "You okay, ma'am?" the driver asked. It took me a second to realize he meant me, a stranger, concerned. The irony stung. As the sun crawled over the rooftops, I said it again, louder this time. "If they erased me, I'll rewrite myself." I ended up at a diner an hour later, somewhere off Route 18. I don't even remember walking there. I just arrived. I took a seat at the counter, vinyl cushion cracked beneath me. The smell of burnt coffee and fried eggs filled the place. The waitress was maybe 60, kind eyes. Red lipstick fading at the corners. She looked at me for a moment, really looked. "You look like you've been through a storm," she said gently. I wanted to lie. Say I was fine. But what came out instead was, it wasn't the storm, it was home. That silence that followed, it wasn't awkward, it was real. She nodded like she understood more than she let on. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching it swirl like maybe it held answers. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there, still. "They took the house," I whispered. "Not my worth." I stood up, paid for the coffee with a crumpled 5, and turned to leave. That's when he appeared. A man in a dark coat, late 50s maybe, crisp but tired around the edges. He didn't smile, just gave me a nod. "Excuse me," he said, polite but firm. "Are you Ms. Shiloh Alden?" I froze. No one had said my full name in months. "Yes, I am." He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded envelope. Thick paper, real ink. "You might want to sit down," he said. "Your grandfather, Mr. Michael Alden, just passed away." The words landed like ice down my spine. He held the letter between us, waiting. "He left you something, but there's a condition." Colby Wren, That's what he said when I asked who he was. Dressed in a dark wool coat, scarf tucked neatly, with eyes too tired for his calm voice. Legal liaison for Michael Alden, my grandfather. A name I hadn't heard spoken aloud since I was 5, and even then, it was in whispers. My parents never brought him up unless it was to spit his name like it left a bad taste. He pulled out his ID like he expected me not to believe him. I didn't. Not at first. I'm here because of Mr. Alden's instructions, he said, sliding a thick envelope across the diner counter. He passed last week. Cancer. I stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. And he wanted me to have this? Only you. No one else. The waitress came back to top off my coffee. I didn't drink it. I just looked at the steam, then back at him. Why me? I asked. Colby didn't blink. That's the question we all had. There was something in his voice that wasn't pity, it was certainty. Like he already knew what was inside the envelope, but wanted to see what it did to me. I picked it up. The paper felt expensive. My name written in thick black ink across the front. No return address. No nonsense. I waited until he gave me a slight nod before I opened it. The handwriting was neat. Script. Old-school cursive. The kind you only see on wedding invitations and wills. At the bottom of the first page, Michael G. Alden. I read the opening twice, not because I didn't understand it, but because I couldn't believe it was meant for me. He remembered me. Just one visit, one weekend, when I was barely old enough to tie my shoes without help. He wrote, "You were 5. You asked me why grown-ups lie. I didn't have the courage to answer you honestly then." He talked about being shut out, how my parents kept him away from me. "They erased me from your life," he wrote, "just like they're erasing you now." I read that line 3 times. He knew. "They painted me as unstable," he continued, "angry, manipulative. Maybe I was once, but they were afraid of what I'd tell you." My hands started to tremble, not from joy. Nothing about this felt joyful, but from a sudden weight I hadn't expected to carry. The final line was short. "You are the only one who saw through them, even as a child. That's why everything I've built is yours." I folded the letter back up. My fingertips were numb. The silence between us at the table could have stretched for miles. Colby slid another envelope over. This one, thicker, stamped. "The will," he said. "A scanned copy. The original is with the estate executor in Phoenix." I hesitated before opening it. And then I saw the number. $67 million. In assets, property, art, stocks, liquidity, all wrapped up in a family trust. But the catch was clear. I had to live in Michael Alden's Arizona estate for 1 year. No breaks, no loopholes. I let out a short laugh. Not from humor, from disbelief. "This is real?" Colby nodded. "Very. Your parents tried to block it. He anticipated that, set every document in place to ensure you're the only legal recipient." I shook my head, staring out the diner window. No birthday cards, no phone calls, not a single holiday memory with the man, and now this. "Why now?" I asked, half to myself. "Sometimes," Colby said, "the end of someone's life is their last shot at telling the truth." He pulled out a tablet, swiped through photos of the Arizona estate. Wide, dry land, a home carved from stone and sky, rooms too large for one person, sunsets that looked fake. "This could be your new home," he said, "if you're willing to accept what's waiting." What's waiting? That line clung to the inside of my head like dust on glass. I turned the letter over again, scanning every inch, like something might pop out and make it make sense. But all I saw was absence. Regret inked in cursive. Was this legacy? Or leverage? A part of me wanted to rip it up, walk out, call it manipulation wrapped in inheritance. But another part, a quieter, more dangerous one, was curious. Hungry. What did they do to him? My parents had made sure I never saw him, never spoke his name without being corrected. And yet here he was, years after being erased from my life, leaving me the only key to everything he owned. I thought back to that morning, my mother's voice, So calm, so cold. You'll thank us later. Was she trying to protect me? Or hide me? What if I was never the black sheep? What if I was just inconvenient? I looked at Colby. What exactly did they do to him? The women's shelter was quiet. Too quiet. It always felt like holding your breath, waiting for someone else's storm to pass. I sat there on the narrow cot, the thin blanket barely covering my legs, holding the letter from Michael Alden like it was a match I was afraid to strike. His name echoed in my head, bouncing around between disbelief and something that felt dangerously close to hope. The overhead light buzzed. Somewhere down the hall, someone coughed. The air was thick with disinfectant and day-old bread. I stared at the tile floor and whispered, if he wanted to be part of my life, why didn't he come? I reached for my phone. Scrolled. Nothing. My childhood was photo after photo of recitals, birthdays, school trips, but he wasn't in any of them. No grainy shots of an old man holding my hand. No blurry Christmas card tucked into the corner of the fridge, just absence. And that hurt in a way I didn't want to admit. I pulled my knees up and stared at the screen. I couldn't picture his face, not at 5, not at 35. That kind of forgetting doesn't happen by accident. It's built, crafted. Someone made sure I never asked why he was gone. I thought about being 8, standing in the kitchen asking my mom why we never saw Grandpa Michael. I still remember her tone, tight and final. He chose money over family. I believed it, like kids believe everything their parents say. But now I was holding proof that he hadn't chosen to disappear. He'd been removed. My thoughts shifted to a fight I overheard when I was 10. My father yelling in the living room after he thought I was asleep. She doesn't need to know the truth, he had said. Back then, I thought it was about a broken toy. Now I wondered if every piece of my childhood had been edited for effect. They didn't protect me, I said under my breath. They protected the lie. I opened my backpack. Among the few things I'd grabbed in the rush was a worn-out box, scratched, duct-taped, full of childhood keepsakes. I dug through it, dried up markers, a friendship bracelet, a lopsided ceramic cat I made in 3rd grade, and then, buried under it all, an envelope. It was old, yellowed. The return address stopped me cold. MG, Alden, Scottsdale, AZ. I froze. The postmark was from a decade ago. It had never been opened. I hadn't even known it was there. My fingers shook as I opened it. Inside was a birthday card. On the front, a cartoon telescope. Inside, to my brave little explorer. I hope you're still dreaming big. His handwriting again. There was a check inside. Long expired, but it had been for $1,000. I didn't cry because of the money. I cried because someone had made sure I never saw it. Someone opened that box, saw the letter, and shoved it underneath the rubble of childhood junk like it was trash. Like he was trash. They never even gave me the choice. I sat there on the cot and let the tears come. Not because I was broken, but because I wasn't. I was finally seeing the cracks in the foundation they built under me. This wasn't about inheritance anymore. It was about everything that had been stolen. I sat up straight, wiped my face. He didn't walk away from us, I said out loud. They pushed him out and made me believe he left. Every time they said, he's not worth talking about, or let it go, what they really meant was, you don't deserve to know. I picked up my phone. Hit record. My name is Shiloh Alden. If I ever start to doubt myself again, I want to remember this night. My parents didn't protect me. They protected their version of the truth, but they can't do that anymore. I saved the file. This wasn't just about money. This was about the way silence had shaped my life. They lied to me for years, and they smiled while doing it. I looked at the card again. The words and the $1,000 that were meant for a birthday I never got to share. I was never unwanted. I was hidden, a problem to be managed. That's why this letter meant more than the inheritance. It meant I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining the coldness. I wasn't wrong to feel unwanted. They made me feel like a burden, while they buried the only man who tried to reach me. This ends now. I knew what I had to do. I was going to find my mother. The Alden estate looked like it had something to prove. As I pulled up, dusk had already dipped the house in deep shadows. That building didn't just loom, it judged you from the driveway. I stepped out in a borrowed navy dress, thrift store shoes that pinched, and my nerves tucked under the envelope clutched in my hand, the one that held Michael Alden's letter. His truth, my proof. A tall butler opened the main door, nodding with practiced coldness. His eyes skimmed over me like a barcode he didn't recognize. I followed his lead through corridors I had no memory of, past portraits I wasn't in. When I reached the reception hall, the air shifted. Crisp white tablecloths, polished silverware, men in suits with names that rattled in courtrooms, women in pearls that clicked when they whispered. I did not belong. But I wasn't leaving. We passed a room with glass doors, an audiovisual suite. I caught a flicker of a screen and paused. It was an old video, one I remembered from years ago, a family reunion. I used to be in it. At least I thought I was. Now, the screen showed my cousin Darla playing with Michael, my siblings running in circles. But no little girl with a red scarf trailing behind her grandfather. No me. I stepped closer. Can you rewind that? I asked the technician inside. He glanced over, confused. That's how the file's always been, he said. Master's orders, years ago. I swallowed hard. So, you cut someone out? He shrugged. I just play what I'm told. I lifted my phone and snapped a photo of the playback screen, evidence of absence. Then I walked into the banquet hall. The seating chart was displayed on a poster. Names neatly written. Family grouped in predictable clusters. Mine wasn't there. I scanned twice. No Shiloh, no Alden, nothing. I walked to the host stand. Hi, which table should I be at? The woman scanned the list. Oh, we're actually at capacity. Right. I looked across the room and saw Darla's table. Her place setting had been spread wide, her nameplate shifted to allow for someone else. Of course, I spotted a chair tucked in a corner, no tag. As I stepped toward it, a man in a navy blazer stepped in front of me, nudging me back with his arm. That one's taken. I didn't argue. I backed away slowly, breath caught in my throat. Around me, the murmurs started. She's the one they cut off, right? That's the girl who showed up out of nowhere. Didn't she get written out of the will? I didn't flinch. Not yet. The MC took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, a moment of appreciation for the family that built this legacy. And we welcome a returning relative tonight. Miss Sheila? The mispronunciation wasn't an accident. He stared at me like I'd broken into the place. I stood. All eyes turned. My hands were cold, but my back was straight. Excuse me, I said, stepping toward the stage. May I say something? No one responded, but no one stopped me. I took the mic. I was never missing, I began. I was removed. The silence broke into small gasps. My name is Shiloh Alden. I was erased from this family. Not by chance, not by death, by design. My voice was steady, clear, not loud, but cutting. I grew up thinking my grandfather abandoned me. I thought I was unloved, unworthy. Turns out, someone just decided I shouldn't exist in your version of the story. I looked to the technician in the corner, lifted the small remote I'd kept tucked in my clutch, pressed it. The screen behind me flickered. There it was, grainy but real. A little girl with a red scarf holding Michael Alden's hand. Me. The original video. Undeniable. The room held its breath. I turned slowly, locking eyes with my mother first, then my father, and then Darla. Face yourself now. They didn't speak, didn't move, but the look on my mother's face said everything. She'd been seen. The sun came through the curtains like it didn't care whose life it was shining on. A tray sat on the small table beside the bed, cold coffee, overcooked eggs, and a folded note resting on the napkin. The handwriting was neat, deliberate. Let's talk before you make more mistakes. Darla. I stared at it, reading the sentence again and again, the word mistakes digging under my skin. The night before had already carved enough scars into me, but curiosity, no, clarity, pulled me out of bed. I needed to see their faces when they tried to rewrite the story again. I pulled on my coat, slipping the small USB and the phone with the voice memo into the pocket. They were my insurance, my truth. I didn't know which one I'd need first, but I wasn't walking in unarmed. The hallway was quiet as I walked toward the family quarters. My shoes clicked against the marble, echoing against portraits of people who'd rather die than admit what they'd done. Every photo felt like it was watching me, daring me to stop. When I reached the dining room, the air already felt poisoned. My mother sat at the far end of the long oak table, arms crossed, eyes sharp. Darla leaned against the sideboard, pretending calm but fidgeting with her bracelet. My father's chair was empty. No surprise there. He never showed up when truth was on the table. My mother didn't bother with small talk. "You embarrassed this family," she said flatly. I didn't sit down. "You disowned the truth." Her lips pressed tight. "You could have handled it privately." "Privately?" I asked, setting the letter on the table. "You erased me." Grandpa remembered. Darla stepped forward, voice measured. "No one erased you. You blew everything out of proportion." I looked at her, calm but cold. "You deleted me from home videos, cut my name off invitations, told everyone I'd left by choice. That's not misunderstanding, that's strategy." My mother's voice wavered just slightly. You have no idea what that man put us through." I leaned closer. "And you had no right to bury him twice." Her face stiffened, but she didn't deny it. I reached into my coat and pulled out the yellowed birthday card. "You hid this." Her eyes flickered toward it, but didn't move. "It wasn't your business." "Neither was my inheritance," I said. "But he gave it to me anyway." Darla's tone sharpened. "You think money changes what he was?" I ignored her. "This isn't about money. It's about honesty and the decades you stole from both of us." Then, I pressed play on my phone. The sound of my mother's voice filled the room. "She doesn't need to know the truth." Her eyes went wide. "Where did you—" "You said it," I cut her off. "In this house, years ago. And I recorded it." Darla's jaw dropped. "You recorded Mom?" I turned to her. "No, I recorded survival." They both went silent. For the first time, it wasn't guilt that filled the air. It was exposure. I reached into my pocket again, pulling out the USB. I placed it on the table next to the letter. "This holds the original video from the archives, the one with me in it, the one you replaced." My mother's hands trembled, but she covered it by tightening her grip on her teacup. "You're destroying your own family." "No," I said softly. "You already did that. I'm just refusing to carry the blame." Her eyes narrowed. "So what now? You'll take his money and pretend we never existed?" I met her gaze without flinching. "No, I'll take the truth and stop pretending you ever existed." Darla's face twisted. "He only gave it to you to hurt us." I shook my head slowly. "He gave it to me to undo what you did." The silence after that wasn't empty. It was thick, alive. I could hear the clock ticking, the kind of sound that feels like a countdown to an ending. Then, my mother spoke again, her voice lower. "We can make this right. There's still time to settle things quietly." "You don't want to drag the family name through more dirt." I let out a short laugh. "You mean you don't want me to tell the truth? You want to bury it again, only this time with me on top of it." I stepped back, feeling the shift inside me, the line being drawn. "I'm not here for forgiveness," I said. "I came to tell you that I see you now. All of you. And I'm done." My mother's face hardened, but there was something behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Darla looked like she wanted to speak, but I didn't give her the chance. "I'm done hiding, done defending, done apologizing for existing. You wanted silence. I'm giving you absence instead." I turned and walked toward the door. "Shiloh!" my mother called after me. I stopped at the threshold but didn't turn around. "I hope you know what you're walking away from," she said. I smiled faintly. Yes, I'm walking away from a lie. Outside, the morning was bright and cold. The air bit my cheeks, but it felt cleaner than anything inside that house. I pulled Michael Alden's letter from my pocket, the edges worn now from how many times I'd unfolded it. The last line still hit hard every time I read it. This world owes you nothing, but you owe it to yourself to never disappear again. For the first time, I believed him. The gates creaked as I pushed them open. Behind me, the estate stood silent, a monument to arrogance and denial. I didn't cry, I didn't tremble, I just breathed. And as I walked down the long drive, I knew it wasn't escape. It was arrival. It had been 3 days since I walked out of that house and didn't look back. I'd kept a low profile, no interviews, no posts, just quiet mornings at the hotel and long walks around downtown. I needed space to breathe, to process. That silence ended with a buzz, then another, then dozens. My phone vibrated across the nightstand like it was panicking for me. A message popped up from Lena, an old college friend. "Shiloh, girl, you're trending. Go look, now." I tapped the link. A headline screamed at me. "Inheritance scandal. Did Shiloh manipulate her dying grandfather?" I blinked twice, jaw clenched. The article was littered with blurry screenshots, a photo of me hugging Mr. Alden, cropped to look suspicious, and quotes I'd never said. A section read, "Confirmed by an anonymous family source." I wasn't even angry yet. I was still absorbing how quickly people wanted a villain, how fast they chose their side. But that line, anonymous family source, that's what burned. There were only a handful of people who had access to this kind of detail, and they all shared my last name. I left the hotel with my coat barely buttoned, the wind cutting through the gaps. By the time I reached the cafe to meet Gerald, Mr. Alden's legal rep, he'd already pulled up the article on his tablet. "This is ugly," he said, setting it down. "You might want to consider laying low." "I did that for 10 years, I answered. "Didn't change a damn thing." He nodded slowly, sipping his black coffee. "Then you should know, this doesn't look random. These leaks. Someone's orchestrating this, purposefully." "I know," I said. "Only family had those photos. Only family knew the timeline." It clicked. Darla's warning during our last meeting. This could have stayed private. I stared out the window, not even seeing the street anymore. This was their quiet deal. Stay silent or face the smear. I picked up my phone and opened my notes. No more sitting back. I was going to fight their narrative with my truth. That afternoon, I called Becca Alvarez, a local podcast host I knew from high school. She'd built her show on real stories, not gossip. We met up at a little corner booth near the train tracks, far from the upscale scene my family liked to be seen in. She set up 2 microphones, 1 iPad, and a single question. "You ready?" I nodded. "Record." We talked for an hour. I laid it out, no drama, no embellishments. I gave her the legal letters, Grandpa's voice memo, the full uncut video of the will reading, and my own words. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because erasing someone doesn't make them disappear." When she uploaded the episode, I didn't expect much. But within a few hours, the comments started rolling in. People saying, "This happened to my aunt," or "My brother did the same to our mom." It wasn't sympathy. They weren't babying me. It was recognition. They'd seen this before. Support grew. Quietly. Organically. No trending hashtags, just shared stories between people who understood what betrayal in a family really looked like. Then came the text. Blocked number. "You should have stayed silent." I stared at it. No name, no reply. But I wasn't rattled. I was curious. I forwarded the screenshot to a friend in cybersecurity, asked him to trace the IP behind the leaked emails. An hour later, he called back. "It links to someone using a network out of a private estate," he said. "One that matches the assistant registered under Darla Blackwell's staff account." I called Darla, straight to voicemail. I waited, called again. On the 3rd try, she picked up. "You really sent that?" I asked. No hello, no preamble. A pause. Then, "You're not the only one hurting." I let that sit. "No, but I'm the only one you tried to bury alive." Her voice was thin, too even. "You could have kept it quiet." You chose the stage. And you chose to lie to the world about me. Silence. I ended the call, not because I didn't want to hear more, but because I already had enough. She'd confirmed everything with what she didn't say. That night, I opened my laptop and wrote, "Just me, a blank screen, and the truth." To the ones who said I didn't belong, I typed, "You tried to define me by inheritance, by silence, by blood. But I've learned, none of that means family." I posted it to my blog. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't polished, but it hit where it needed to. By morning, emails poured in, messages from older folks, some I'd never met, telling me they saw themselves in my story. The blog circled in elder rights forums, retirement advocacy pages. I got a call from a national talk show the next day. I thanked them but declined. "This story isn't about going viral," I told the producer. "It's about people like me knowing they're not alone." It wasn't over. I knew that, but for the first time, I wasn't speaking on someone else's stage. I had built my own, and I wasn't stepping off. By midday, the sun was high and unrelenting, yet the estate's legal chamber felt colder than any courtroom I'd ever walked into. Colby Wren met me at the front gate and escorted me past the stone garden I used to play in as a child. Strange how even sunlight could feel dimmed by what waited inside. Inside, it was all dark wood and tight faces. Darla and her team were already seated at one end of the long table. Not a single smile, not a single nod, just eyes that dared me to slip. I sat across, straight-backed, fingers curled lightly around the envelope in my coat pocket, my father's handwriting barely visible through the paper's crease. The judge's clerk began. "Let's start with introductions." Darla's lawyer, a man with a sharp tie and a sharper voice, spoke first. Then came my turn. The man looked down at the paperwork, then up at me. "Shaylo Rowland." There was a pause. Not a question, just a deliberate public error. Then, almost casually, he added, "Our team will also be questioning the legitimacy of her birth status, given recent revelations suggesting possible adoption." It felt like a slap, not a loud one. No, this kind was worse. It was meant to shame, to belittle without raising a voice. People stirred. A whisper ran across the bench behind us. Someone sucked in air. And for one frozen second, I felt 14 again, overhearing things I wasn't supposed to, trying to piece myself together from secrets and fragments. I looked at my mother. Her eyes didn't meet mine. My father sat behind her, as still as a painting. My mouth felt dry, but I said it anyway. "I was never adopted. You erased me. That's not the same thing." The judge pounded the gavel. "Order." But the seed had already landed, and Darla knew it. Her attorney stood, almost smug. Given Miss Rowan's limited connection with Mr. Alden prior to the final year of his life, and the inconsistencies in familial interaction, we simply believe clarity is warranted. "Clarity?" I said, louder than I meant to. "You mean character assassination dressed as paperwork?" The judge raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. I pulled the envelope out of my coat, unfolded the contents carefully, then slid them across the table. "These," I said, "were prepared by Mr. Alden years ago. A sealed birth certificate, a DNA test, a chain of custody signed by 2 licensed notaries, and, if you flip to the second page, my grandfather's signature." The documents landed with a dull thud. Even that sound carried weight. Darla leaned forward, face tight, jaw working. Her lawyer attempted to object, citing timing and relevance, but the judge held up a hand. "Let me read," he said. The silence stretched. When he looked up, it was only at me. "Do you swear this evidence is untampered?" "I do." "I've waited half my life for this to be seen." He nodded, then turned to Darla. "Does your team wish to formally challenge the contents?" Darla looked between me and the papers. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her lawyer stood again. "We will need time to verify the document's authenticity." "Of course you will," I muttered. Then the judge asked for my mother to respond. She cleared her throat, voice shaky. I always did what's best for the family. My chest burned. Best for the family meant silencing me, I said. Best for the family meant letting a lie sit in the attic while I wondered why no one looked at me the same. Darla didn't flinch, but her eyes were sharper now. You're just playing the sympathy card, she said. You've won because you exposed things we all agreed not to dig up. Congratulations. I leaned forward, steady. I didn't win by exposing secrets. I survived them. There's a difference. The judge cleared his throat, more irritated now. I'm entering these documents into the record. The name entered is hereby corrected. Shiloh D. Rowan, direct bloodline of the Alden estate. Any future claims suggesting otherwise will be considered defamatory, and penalties will apply. The clerk nodded, typing fast. The words echoed more than I expected. Shiloh D. Rowan, rightful heir. My mother looked down. My father still hadn't moved. Darla folded her arms. The war in her eyes wasn't over, but the ground had shifted. As I stood to leave, Colby touched my arm, lightly. No words, just that quiet acknowledgement. I didn't look back as I walked out, because whatever was coming next, I wasn't walking in as the family's mistake. I was walking in as proof that erasure didn't mean absence. The envelope was thin but felt heavier than anything I'd held in weeks. It came just past 7, slipped under the door of my hotel suite while I was brushing my teeth. I didn't hear a knock, just the faint sound of paper dragging across carpet. When I opened the door, the hallway was empty. It was stamped with a wax seal. My grandfather's initials pressed into it like a ghost from another century. The note clipped on top read, Clause B will explain everything. Open when you're ready to lead, not just survive. I stared at it for 10 minutes without moving. The light in the room had turned gold-orange from the city sunset, and still, I hadn't torn the flap. When I finally did, the inside revealed a single sheet marked, Confidential Addendum. Below that, in all caps, Beneficiary Addendum, Shiloh D. Rowan. It wasn't the kind of paper you skim. You read every word like your future depends on it, because in this case, mine did. The clause was simple, chilling, and sharp. I would inherit only if I publicly pursued legal accountability against any party that attempted to manipulate, suppress, or alter the estate. I sat back, paper trembling slightly in my hand. This wasn't a payout. It was a challenge. It was my grandfather's way of forcing me out of the corner I'd been shoved into. He didn't want me quiet. He wanted me loud. I texted Colby Wren, told him to meet me first thing in the morning. At his office, Colby didn't need long. It's legally binding, no question. What if I don't want to fight them? I asked. Then the money goes back to the rest. You walk away with nothing. So, this is justice with a knife taped to it. He nodded. That's one way to put it. I didn't speak for a while, just stared at the floor-to-ceiling window behind him. Somewhere down there, my last name was being whispered across dinner tables, typed into headlines. I could already feel it coming. By noon, it had leaked, the clause, the condition. Me. Darla's lawyer must have called in a favor with one of her favorite news stations, because within an hour, there it was. Heiress must sue family to inherit 67 Elmire's fortune. The worst part? The comments. She's just looking for attention. This woman's been bitter for years. Isn't this what she wanted all along? Darla's people played it perfectly. PR blitz. Interviews with sources close to the family, claiming I was stalling, unsure, maybe even unstable. Her lawyer, smooth as ever, gave a vague quote. We respect Shiloh's decision, whatever it may be. We just hope she finds peace. Peace. The word hit like spit in my face. I shut off the news, ignored the messages, and pulled out the folder from Mr. Alden's archive. Tapes, letters, old memos. I sat cross-legged on the hotel bed, headphones on, hearing my grandfather's voice again for the first time in years. By now, they've tried to drown you. I'm asking you to stand where I couldn't. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not this time, not anymore. By midnight, I had decided, at 9 a.m. sharp, I walked back into Colby's office. My signature went on the agreement to activate Clause B. The paper didn't shake this time. I knew exactly what I was doing. We hired a litigation firm, aggressive, unshakable, specializing in elder abuse and estate tampering. By the end of the day, they had begun building the case. We started with bank transfers, altered memos, manipulated signatures. Then came threats, emails, voicemails, backdoor conversations Mr. Alden had recorded over the years. It was all there. And the worst part? Darla had been orchestrating it longer than I'd known him. 12 years of positioning herself, of slowly pushing me out of every family decision. She rewrote history while I was living it. By Thursday afternoon, we made the first move. The notices were delivered in person. Darla, Marcus, the family trust. One by one, their faces must have been a painting. Within hours, headlines screamed, "Shiloh Rowan declares legal war over grandfather." The morning I walked through the front gate of the Alden estate, the gravel didn't crunch underfoot the same way it used to. Everything felt quieter. Not just because the media had packed up and left, but because something in me had stopped bracing for impact. The staff, now answering to me, nodded as I passed. No stiff politeness, no sidelong glances, just calm recognition. One of them, a groundskeeper I remembered from my childhood, approached with an envelope and a key in his weathered hand. "He said only you would know when to use it," he murmured. The key was old brass, with a tag etched, "Study, East Wing." That part of the house had been locked my whole life. I made my way down a hallway I'd never been allowed to touch. The lock clicked open after I signed into the security panel. The door opened slowly, stiff from disuse. Inside, nothing had been touched. His study was preserved, as if waiting. Books lined the walls. The light was dim. On the massive oak desk lay one thing, a leather envelope, heavy with age and sealed with red wax. "For Shiloh only, when it's over." I sat down in his chair and stared at that envelope like it might vanish if I blinked. When I opened it, I unfolded something I hadn't had in years. Unfiltered truth. "Shiloh," it began, "if this letter's in your hands, it means the old guard has finally crumbled." He didn't sugarcoat anything. He spoke of the rot in our bloodline, of family secrets buried under country club smiles and charitable foundations. And then, he told me why he'd kept me at a distance. "You were never meant to carry their sickness. You were adopted after my cousin's death." The fire, the silence. They weren't accidents. They were tradition, wrapped in fear. He'd protected me, not from poverty or shame, but from a legacy of control. That's why he never let me near certain wings of the house, why he kept emergency funds hidden under pseudonyms, why he never demanded loyalty but gave me freedom in doses. "I didn't keep you away. I kept the poison from finding you." That line stayed with me. I folded the letter but couldn't let go of it. My chest burned with everything I'd mistaken for abandonment. Turns out, it was armor. On the far wall of the study, oil portraits hung in dim light. I stood, almost afraid to get closer. But I did. And there she was, Amelia Rowan, my birth mother. She looked exactly like me. The plaque below her read her name and a year that matched the fire I'd read about in an old article buried deep in the legal files. They'd buried more than ashes. Next to the portrait sat a small tape recorder. I pressed play. His voice, thin but steady, filled the room. "If I'm not there to tell you, then hear this. You are not here to inherit wealth. You are here to end a pattern. You are not their echo, Shiloh. You are the restart button." I stood in that room for a long time, holding pieces of myself I didn't know had been missing. It wasn't grief I felt. It was relief, a hard-earned exhale. Later that afternoon, I called Colby. "I want the house converted into something new," I told him. "What kind of new?" he asked. "A safe place, for girls who've been through what I have, or worse." We started the process that day. The estate would become a foundation for young women recovering from family trauma. Not a charity, a sanctuary. I kept only 2 rooms intact, the study and the bedroom I used to sleep in. The rest was stripped, painted, repurposed. I donated a third of the inheritance to programs helping displaced youth. I didn't make an announcement, no interviews, no press conference. I acted. The media, hungry for a fresh scandal, tried to spin it. But I didn't care anymore. That part of me was gone. A week later, I drove to my parents' house. It looked the same. A place frozen in its own kind of time. My mother opened the door. Her face carried the weight of decades in a second. She started. I'm not here to blame you, I said. I'm here to set a boundary. She stepped aside like she thought I'd come in. I didn't. I don't owe you anything, but I do wish you peace. Far from me. My father stood behind her, arms crossed. He said nothing. He never had. I turned and walked away. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like release. On the way back, I stopped by the old bus bench. The same one I sat at in Chapter 1, years and lifetimes ago. Someone had cleaned it, polished the metal. A small brass plaque had been mounted beneath the seat. To those who rise alone. I sat down, letting the evening settle around me. I didn't cry, I didn't smile, I just sat, not waiting to be rescued, not mourning who I used to be. Just being.